Hello, lovely people. It's Nicola in the Stitches and Slapdashery sewing room with a very, very bad cold. It may be COVID, I'm not sure yet. I've had a couple of negative tests the last couple of days, but I'm not sleeping well, so I've probably got lovely big black bags under my eyes. And yeah, having to call in sick a couple of days in a row and probably again tomorrow. Have some ginger tea and some lemon water at the ready, hoping it'll stave off the coughing. Seeing as I'm not at work today and I have this extra time, I thought I would try and get this tutorial made for the little dish scrubbies and the dishcloths that I like to make. I haven't been able to find the strips of tulle that I thought I already had cut in a bag somewhere. I may have tossed them, I'm not sure. But I did find some white tulle in my drawer, and I have cut it very roughly into approximately 1-inch strips. They're all separate right now, but I'm going to join them end to end, and hopefully this little bundle is going to be enough for one scrubby. I know white isn't exactly a good colour for a dish scrubby because it's going to get super dirty, but I just wanted to demo it. And then I also have my little box of dishcloth yarn, and I'm ready to get started. I'm showing you how I make my dishcloths with the scrubby part in the middle and the cotton part around the outside. These are the two yarns I'm going to be using for my dishcloth. This is going to be in the center. There's going to be a double layer of this polyester scrubby yarn and an outer layer, single layer, of the dishcloth cotton. I won't bother telling you what this brand is because it's discontinued and you can't get it anymore, but I'll leave some resources down in the description so that you can check them out. This type of dishcloth is brilliant because you can use it to wipe up spills, you can use it to scrub dishes that aren't too super dirty. I mean, sometimes you've got to really go hard at a stain or a stuck-on bit of food, don't you? But this will do the job for not too nasty cleanups. My grammar today is terrible. I blame being sick. Okay, I am using a 5mm hook. Again, gauge is not crucial. Just work with whatever works with your yarn to make a nice result. And I'm going to do 2 circles out of this. Since I started crocheting my own dishcloths, I have not bought paper towels. It's probably been 20 years since I bought paper towels. So much easier just to wipe up spills with something that you can throw in the wash afterwards. So once I've put my slip knot on there, I am just going to do 2 chains. I like the security of the slip knot rather than the magic loop in these things. And I'm going to do 6 single crochets into that second chain from the hook. Now I know what you're going to say. Can't see your stitches. I know. That's okay. Yarn like this can be friend or foe. The good thing about it is that if your stitches aren't perfect, you're not going to be able to tell. So what I'm going to be doing, once I've done my first 6 stitches into that first chain, I'm going to approximately do an increase in all of those stitches around and end up with approximately 12. It can take a bit of getting used to working with this stuff because it is kind of wacky. But if you miss a stitch or add a stitch, it doesn't matter. As long as you end up with a flattish circle, that's all that matters. We're not going to slip stitch and join and then chain up. We're just going to go in a spiral. Yeah, I can't see where I just did that stitch, so I'm going to guess. Just going to work in a spiral, increasing as necessary to keep a flattish circle. If you want something mathematical to follow, start with 6 single crochets in the first round and do an increase in every stitch on the second round to give you 12, and then increase 6 on each subsequent round. What I aim for, I usually just eyeball the size of these, but what I normally aim for is a 3-inch circle or 7.5 centimeters. If you want to keep track of your rounds, you can use a locking stitch marker like this, and then pop it in one of your stitches, close it up, and then space your 6 increases around the circle. And then when you get back to the stitch marker, you can start counting your increases again. Sometimes I like to work without a safety net. I've reached my 3-inch diameter, and there's approximately 30 stitches there. I haven't been checking how many stitches I've got when I've made my previous ones because I just crochet to a measurement, make sure they approximately match, and then when I'm joining them around the outside, I can fudge it a bit if they're not exactly the same. But if it bothers you, you can try and count your stitches. It will be a little bit challenging in this fuzzy yarn though. And this is the side that is facing you when you're crocheting, but I like to use this fuzzier side, which is the back of your work, as my outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put my hook through the center there and pull this tail through and put it on the front, which is currently the front and will eventually be the back. So just to finish off, I'm just going to do a slip stitch and then chain one and then fasten that off. And then you just need to make a second one. I just popped upstairs and weighed one of my finished dishcloths, and it weighed 32 grams. Now, I'm not sure of how much polyester yarn that was compared to cotton yarn. But if you have 2 100-gram balls of these yarns, you're going to get at least 4 out of them, possibly more. My second circle is approximately the same size as my first one. They have approximately the same amount of stitches around the outside. So I'm going to finish off again with a slip stitch, a chain one, and trim the yarn. And again, pull that tail through the other side. Struggle, struggle. I don't always do this, but what you can do is you can use your center tails to tie the two circles together. Doesn't have to be tightly, but just holds them together while you're going to crochet around the outsides. There we are. I've just knotted them together in the middle. And I'm going to trim those tails a little bit, but not too short. So there's my two circles attached to each other. And I'm going to now grab my cotton yarn. Make a slip knot. And start with a standing single crochet into one of the stitches on here. We'll find a stitch, as long as you're going through two strands and it looks about right, it's fine. And then two strands of a stitch on the other side. I'm just going to pull through and complete the single crochet, and that's a standing single crochet, which is nice because it means it starts with a knot. You're not just pulling the yarn through. On the last few that I've made, I have found that doing 3 single crochets followed by an increase works well, keeping the circles flat. As you can see, a lot of it is guesswork. I've done 3 single crochets, and on the next one, I'll make sure that tail is tucked inside. Sometimes you have to peer pretty closely at your work to see what you're doing. I'm going to do 2 single crochets into the next one. And then I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, and then another increase, 2 into the same stitch. You can hide your tails inside. They shouldn't pop out again through the work. It's fairly dense. It can be a little bumpy where the end of the round was on your yellow piece there. But remember, it doesn't have to be perfect. Not only are these merely dishcloths, which are going to be a very functional item in your kitchen and get messy and thrown in the laundry a billion times. No one's going to be looking closely to see if you got your stitches exactly right, are they? So if the increase rate that I'm using doesn't work for you and it feels like it's pulling it in, add a few extra increases if you have to. This is more of a recipe than a strict pattern, because your hook size may differ, your yarn thickness may differ. Well, that didn't work out exactly right with the 3 single crochets and an increase. I ended up doing 2 stitches at an increase at the very end, and then I slip stitched to my first stitch, and that's the first round done. I'm nearly there already. These are really quick to make. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change to double crochet or treble if you're in the UK. I'm going to do 3 chain and then double crochet into that next stitch, and then a double crochet into the next, and then I'm going to do 2 into the next one. Again, this is what works for me. You might need to change your rate of increase if it needs it. I'm going to do 3 doubles and an increase all the way around. Some of my old dishcloths, they look very strange when they've been through the washer and dryer. Sometimes the cotton has sort of shrunk up. The polyester part doesn't shrink in the wash, but the cotton sometimes does. And it looks very strange. But as soon as they get wet, they flatten out and they look fine. And if the stitch multiple doesn't work exactly with my round, I'm not going to fret about it. I've got to the end of that first round of doubles and I'm going to slip stitch to the top of the chain 3. That's what it looks like so far. Something weird happening there. Maybe I missed a stitch when I was going around with the single crochet. Okay, so the next round is just doing a chain 3 and then adding a plain stitch between your increases. So on the first round I did 3 stitches and then an increase. On this round I'm going to do 4 stitches and then an increase. Don't tend to be quite a slapdash with this part because it's easy to see the stitches and to count them as you go. Round 2 is done, and I'm going to join with a slip stitch to the top of these chains. So there's a couple of ways you can join your strips. You could cut a slit in the end of each one and then loop it through and back on itself. But I just tried that way and it's so fiddly and time consuming. And I have less patience than usual. I am just going to do a regular knot and then trim the little tails off. It's just a dish scrubby. It'll be fine. Now this tool that I had lying around in the stash was quite wide, so some of my strips are quite long, which is nice, because that means fewer joins. And because this was a bit of stash fabric, it was not an even size. So I'm not sure exactly what quantity I started with. What I will do, once I've knotted my pieces together, I'll measure how much I have and how much I'm left with at the end, to give you an idea. I have approximately 18 meters of this yarn, tulle yarn, which is now is. I will convert that to yards and put it on the screen, unstretched. And it will stretch as I'm working with it, of course, but that's okay. Now I'm giving it a go with a 4.5mm hook. You want something that's going to give you a tight gauge, whatever that might be. I may need to go with a smaller one, but I'm trying this one to start with. Now I don't start these scrubbies with a magic loop. I like something that's going to stay put. And so I'm going to just start with a slip knot and 2 chains. The width of this, as you can see, is not crucial. If you just cut it messily, approximately the same width throughout, it's fine. So I've done my 2 chains. I'm going to work into the second chain from the hook. It is a good idea to make sure that first loop isn't too tight, because you want to work at least 6 single crochets into that second chain from the hook. It's going to take a little while to get the feel of this. Because it's unfamiliar and not regular yarn. So as I'm working my first stitches into that loop, I'm working over the tail of the yarn as well. Now I tend to make these just by winging it, but if you want to be more accurate than me, the way you do a circle in crochet is you start with 6 single crochets or double crochets if you're in the UK into your circle. Your second round you'd be doing 2 stitches into each stitch around. The third round you'd be doing 1 plain stitch and then a decrease and repeating that around, and then each round you just add another plain stitch in between each increase. And I'm not going to slip stitch to join. I'm just going to work in a spiral. But the beauty of this is it doesn't have to be exact. As long as you're aiming for a flattish circle, it's all good. So I'm going to start with 2 single crochets into each of those stitches. It's actually not so hard once you get going. Work under both loops of that stitch from the previous round. You want these to be sturdy. So as I say, I tend to just make it up as I go along, as long as my circle isn't getting super wavy, in which case I've increased too much, and it's not starting to cup drastically, in which case I haven't increased enough. Just work around and around. Right now I'm still increasing 2 in each stitch, even though I'm into like the 3rd round right now. You can see daylight through the stitches. Now in theory that's not tight enough. I probably should have chosen a smaller hook. But this thing is going to be double thick, so it'll be fine. Okay, I'm going to start increasing in every second stitch now. When you get to a knot, just make sure it's pushed to the back, because it's going to be hidden inside the 2 layers. I've moved you around because I think the light is better here. So all I do after I've used these scrubbies is I just toss them in the laundry with my towel wash. I like to switch out my dishcloth and my scrubby every day. Put a fresh one at the sink every morning and just throw them in the laundry on a usual cycle with the towels. This is definitely looking a little airy, and it might be a better idea to cut these strips a bit wider. Hardly see them, right? Or use an even smaller hook. And the size of it, obviously, is completely up to you. I'm going to stop at this size. It's 2.5 inches across, which is about 7 centimeters. So now I'm going to do a plain round without increasing. I could put a stitch marker in there just so that I know when I come around, but I've just counted the stitches and there are 34 of them, so I'm just going to count 34 stitches. Now that I've done one round without increasing, you can see it starting to cup. And I want to encourage it to go that way, not towards me, but away from me. That's easy to fix a bit later. I'll trim my original tail to about 1.5 inches in the middle there. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to start decreasing periodically. So if you're winging it like me, you're just going to throw a decrease in every now and again and see it curl over on itself and go back down to nothing. It's curving around on itself. What I want to end up with is 2 layers of scrubby. Eventually I'm going to decrease down to my original 6 stitches and finish off. And in the same way that you increased 6 stitches on each round, in the first half you'll decrease 6 stitches in each round on the second half. Approximately. Or whatever works for you to maintain that flat circle. I'm almost there. I just have a small hole left, and I'm going to cut a little piece of this off and thread it through. Helps to have a darning needle with a nice large eye. I'm going to just cinch this closed. And then what I like to do is go through the center and out of the other side. Oops, without pushing tool out of there from inside. Because I like to just hold the 2 layers together. I'll probably do a couple of stitches like that. And then just knock that off. Don't want to pull too hard on this in case it rips. And just tuck that end inside there. It's not the prettiest of things, but it's very functional. The front is tidier than the back. I wasn't counting my decreases. I only used about half of the little ball of tulle yarn that I made. I could probably get another one out of that little ball. Since I've been using these, I have not been buying any of those sponges with the scrubby side and the soft side at all. It saved me quite a bit of money and quite a bit of stuff going into the landfill. So you can tell my brain isn't where it should be today because I have not been checking my microphone, and at some point the battery ran out and I don't know when that was. And also I thought I was recording this last bit when I wasn't. Anyhow, hope you enjoyed the tutorial to make this little scrubby and the dishcloths. As you can see, just lately I've been going a little nuts on them. I like it when they've got the contrast middle, but even the same colour ones look good too, and they are so useful. I have so many of these in my linen closet that these will probably end up going to friends as part of a gift, because why not spread the love? Thank you very much for being here, and I hope to see you again soon for something else. Bye for now.